Ever stop to think about that one inevitable appointment we all have?
Hmm.
The one we kind of mentally RSVP no to, even though we know it's coming.
Yeah, it's funny how we do that.
But what if grappling with that very idea, mortality, could actually sharpen our focus, make us really zero in on the life we're living right now?
It's a profound paradox, isn't it? That acknowledging the finite nature of our time can actually enrich the experience of that time.
Exactly.
And that's precisely what's kind of at the heart of our exploration today.
Yeah, you send over a collection of really compelling material, and what seems to tie it all together is this incredibly striking image, Red Stick, by the artist Bob Camblin.
Mm.
For those who haven't seen it, imagine a stark monochrome skull almost floating in shadow, and then there's this jolt of vibrant color, a red X slashed right beneath it. Really powerful.
A seemingly simple image, yeah. And yet, as the diverse sources you've gathered reveal, it's absolutely brimming with potential meanings. We've got, let's see, a YouTube analysis just on Red Stick, then excerpts from Camblin's own notes and writings,
Right, it's personal stuff.
a detailed biography, a fascinating bit from a book called Zen and the Art of Enlightenment discussing his work, and even a review of a broader art book, The Art of Everything, which touches on Camblin. So, quite a mix.
It's a real journey we're about to embark on, and our goal, as always, is to sort of navigate these layers for you, our listener, to pull out those key insights, those aha
Mm.
moments.
Without the overload.
Exactly, without feeling like you're drowning in info. We want to understand what this red stick image might be saying about life, death, art, maybe even the philosophies behind it all.
Okay.
So let's dive right into the image itself. That monochrome skull against the dark background has this powerful sense of stillness, doesn't it?
That stillness is absolutely deliberate, I think. The lack of color really strips away any distractions, right? It focuses us on the bare reality, the fundamental truth of mortality represented by the skull.
Yeah.
It's a universal symbol, pretty much instantly bringing death to mind. And the way it's positioned in shadow, it kind of evokes that sense of mystery, the unknown that, well, inevitably awaits us all.
And then that sudden burst of color, the intense red X. It's such a forceful mark. The YouTube analysis you share throws out so many possibilities. Negation, a clear no, maybe a warning, or this idea of crossing out the ego. What resonates most with you about that X?
Well, what's truly captivating is how these interpretations kind of intertwine. That X could certainly be a forceful negation, yeah, a rejection of the illusion of permanence we often cling to.
Right, like stop.
But when we consider the potential influence of Zen Buddhism on Camblin, as some sources suggest, that bold X could also symbolize a courageous act, the bravery needed to truly face our own mortality, not shy away from it.
Okay, so courage.
And the notion of renouncing attachment to things that cannot last. That's central in many Eastern philosophies, right? And the X visually embodies that kind of severing. So it's not just one meaning, maybe, but a convergence of powerful ideas.
The YouTube analysis also points to these downward brush strokes around the skull, suggesting perhaps darkness and decay, the sort of physical reality of death.
Mm.
But then it flips that and proposes it could also represent a path to freedom. That's a really thought-provoking duality.
It is. Art that grapples with these fundamental things often embraces ambiguities like that. The darkness and decay are, of course, the natural progression.
Sure.
But that path to freedom could be understood, maybe through a Zen lens, as liberation from the fear of death itself. By accepting the impermanent nature of everything, including ourselves, we might just free ourselves from the anxiety of, desperately clinging on.
Oh, okay.
In that context, the skull isn't just a symbol of death, but more like a direct question aimed at you. Knowing this is certain, how then do you choose to live this life?
And so the red X connects to this concept of lie, this idea of liberation that comes from learning to live fully precisely because death is a certainty.
Right.
It's about actively crossing out that persistent illusion of permanence, as the YouTube transcript says, and discovering meaning in our, well, fleeting time. For you, the listener, it's sort of a call to appreciate the present.
Precisely. And if we connect this to a broader perspective, the sources also bring in the I Ching, specifically hexagram 64 Weiji before completion.
Okay, the I Ching.
Think of it like the final step in a long journey, where the outcome isn't yet certain. It demands both caution and resolve.
Right, careful steps needed.
So in this context, the skull and the X could serve as a powerful visual reminder to acknowledge potential pitfalls past mistakes maybe, as we keep striving for that sense of wholeness, that balance. It's a visual representation of needing both careful thought and the courage to move forward.
So red stick functions as a memento mori, a reminder of death, but with a twist. It's not just about being morbid. It's actively urging us, you included, to reflect on how we are living.
Exactly, and the excerpt from Zen and the Art of Enlightenment deepens this by placing red stick within the historical context of, the Venetist tradition in art.
Ah, the old paintings with skulls and hourglasses.
Right, the symbols of transient life. But that vivid red X injects a modern sensibility, a bold symbol and color that feels very much of our time, maybe even hinting at influences from modern art.
It even makes a brief connection to Edvard Munch's The Scream, drawing a line through those shared themes of existential angst, really.
Yeah, that sense of unease.
It's remarkable how much conceptual weight can be packed into what seems like such a simple image. Okay, so having explored the visual elements, let's now turn to the artist himself, Bob Camblin's quotes and notes. This feels like we're getting a direct line into his head.
It truly does. His writings offer such intimate and often, poignant glimpses into his thoughts on time and the fleeting nature of things. Consider that observation. Fortunately, some things remain forever, or another 10 years perhaps.
Huh. Yeah, that's a bit bleakly funny.
It's a beautifully understated acknowledgement of how temporary things really are. For you, it might prompt a reflection on what you consider permanent and how realistic that might be.
And that incredibly evocative line about aging, witnessed through decay, noting how the memory of songs and music stopped. It just paints such a vivid picture of time passing, doesn't it? The subtle ways life fades.
Oh, absolutely. It's a feeling I think many of us can connect with on some level.
Yeah.
What's particularly insightful, I found, is his ability to discover meaning in both the infinitely small and the seemingly mystical. Look into the atom, you get what you need. Look into magic, and you get what you need. He expresses this desire for what he calls a perfectly average perspective, allowing him to appreciate the extraordinary in both science and the, unexplained. For you, it might suggest just being open to different ways of seeing the world.
That yearning for a perfectly average view,
Yeah.
it shows a mind that's just inherently open, isn't it? Not stuck in rigid boxes.
Hmm.
And his concept of the sixth sense being, without a doubt, senza dubio, that really underscores a deep trust in his intuition, something beyond just logic.
Absolutely. And then you see this inherent tension in his writing, this push and pull between spiritual hopes and earthly realities. Bright day and I soar, how cruel that my soul is attached to this earth, and yet.
Yeah, that feeling of being pulled in two directions.
It's that very human experience of yearning for something more while still being, grounded here, a dichotomy many can probably relate to.
And his powerful emphasis on self-honesty. I cannot tell a lie to myself for very long. That's quite a statement.
It is.
Coupled with that beautiful directive. Find something in nature that completes you, and then surrender. It speaks to the importance of that internal truth and the power of letting go sometimes. For you, perhaps it's a reminder to check in with your own core feelings and find where you find that sense of peace.
That connection to the natural world seems really vital for him. And he views art as something far more significant than just, pretty pictures. Art is not just images. Art for art's sake has become art for life's sake, or art for my sake, or art for survival's sake.
Wow, survival's sake. That's strong.
It's imbued with a deeper purpose, a fundamental necessity, it seems.
I'm really struck by this idea he mentions of deliberately stepping off the train of thought to access a different kind of power, a different way of acting.
Hmm.
It's about breaking free from those automatic, habitual ways of thinking that can trap us,
Exactly. And even his brief observation on communication versus argument.
Yeah.
It's so resonant, isn't it?
Yeah, simple but deep.
While both involve talking, true communication needs a totally different kind of openness, a willingness to actually hear the other person.
Precisely. And even his visual descriptions, like the cosmos waves as me with tree leaves, first white, then yellow-green, and in deep shadows blue. They directly connect us to that sensory experience, showing how nature really feeds his art.
Definitely.
And this mention of performance on the tower we set facing the clouds we leave before the show is over suggests a conscious choice to observe a moment, maybe capture its essence, and then just move on before it gets, predictable.
It's like seizing a particular moment, distilling its core feeling maybe, and then not feeling obliged to see it through to some conventional end. And his appreciation for simple observation. Not a leaf moves, and yet we all feel the cool breeze.
Ah, lovely.
It's about tuning into those subtle energies and feelings that often just pass us by in our busy lives.
And his insight into his own process, the quiet reflection, much better than arguing is to look at my watercolor palette.
Chuckle slightly.
And then, white is light, black is absence of light, but people are seen. Even in the basics of color, he finds deeper meaning. And that direct address to nature. Well, that's enough about me, Mother Nature. Let's talk about you. What did you think of my last picture?
Laughs gently.
Yeah.
There's an almost childlike wonder and directness in that, isn't there? It's as if he's just dissolving the boundary between himself and the natural world, having a chat.
Totally.
And his perspective on mistakes and creativity is so freeing. There are no mistakes. You're doing the best you can, and mistakes are nature's way of telling you to trust your instincts. For you, perhaps this offers a gentler way to approach your own work, acknowledging that, missteps can actually be useful.
That really echoes a more accepting, present moment way of being, doesn't it? And this concept of the hologram, of understanding through connection, it speaks again to that interconnectedness we touched on with the I Ching and Zen.
Absolutely. And his thoughts on art and belief are interesting, too. Religion, belief. If I believe in ghosts, I don't have to see one. If I believe it's art, then it is.
It really emphasizes the power of perspective, doesn't it? Intention, faith maybe, in shaping how we see things.
And then love, if experienced, no description is necessary.
That suggests some experiences are just so profound they go beyond words. Direct engagement is the only real truth there.
Exactly. And this idea of balance, resist and submit held in perfect balance, that feels like such a core principle for navigating the dualities of life.
It really does.
Right.
And his distinction between understanding and truly knowing, we all are creative, but we lose our magic in understanding everything instead of knowing.
That intuitive grasp versus just intellectual comprehension.
Right. And his call to resist simply learning in favor of actively feeling and genuinely thinking, it's almost a challenge to typical education, isn't it?
It encourages a more embodied, experiential way of engaging with the world. And then the direct link to Zen. When Zen monks say that we are always the Buddha, but we keep forgetting it, most of the time I knew that, but now I know it.
It's that click, that moment of deep realization that goes way beyond just nodding along intellectually.
Right, the shift from knowing about something to knowing it, and this idea of magic for seeing, as opposed to magic for power, connecting it to a deeper understanding and art that transcends culture, suggests a purer form of expression.
But he also grapples with the fleeting nature of artistic novelty, the dilemma artists face, that tension between creating authentically and the changing trends of the art world.
That struggle for originality and relevance, it's a constant for creative people, and his thoughts on communication, the limits of transferring knowledge without direct experience. Knowledge does not and cannot educate, reinforces how crucial firsthand engagement really is.
You have to live it, sort of.
Seems so. And then we get these really stark, almost brutal images of impermanence. White crystals, white salt, white wing, white bones, dries, feathers, dried flesh, dried rocks, dried sand, dead bird, dead lake, dead sand, dead land.
Wow, that's a powerful, almost relentless list of decay. Just lays it bare.
A raw, unflinching confrontation with the cycles of life and death. And he touches on ego in the creative process, that constant balancing act. And he even hints at his teaching experiences and his unique take on that, plus that intriguing concept he calls the mystic switch.
Yeah, what was that about?
It's not fully explained, but it sounds like he's always searching for that deeper level of connection and insight, maybe a way to flip into a different mode of perception.
These personal quotes and notes really paint a picture of a deeply introspective, philosophical artist, constantly questioning, seeking meaning everywhere. It gives us such valuable context for Red Stick, maybe not as a final statement, but as one moment in this lifelong search.
Absolutely. Now let's turn our attention to Bob Camblin's biography. He's described as this iconoclastic and enigmatic artist.
Yeah.
That immediately sets a certain tone, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And it highlights that his legacy is significant, even if his name isn't, a household one. His journey started conventionally enough with training at the Kansas City Art Institute and that Fulbright scholarship to Italy.
That period in Italy seems to have been pretty formative, judging by his notes.
Undoubtedly. And after his return, he did follow a more traditional path for a bit, teaching at various places. But then that dramatic shift in 1976, choosing a nomadic life dedicated purely to his art over academic stability.
Wow.
That speaks volumes about his commitment, right?
Yeah.
For you, it might raise questions about the choices you've made for your own passions.
Living so directly, funding his life through his art, traveling, creating, It evokes this, well, almost romantic image of an artist deeply connected to his craft, drawing inspiration from everywhere.
And this deep dive includes his intimate drawings and musings created between 1950 and 1974. Stuff never meant for public eyes. That's like being granted access to his private sketchbook, his raw thoughts.
Exactly, an unfiltered glimpse into his inner world back then. And his artistic philosophy, the idea that real art goes beyond criticism and commerce, that it speaks directly to the viewer's soul, sparking thought without needing interpretation, that really fits with the feeling we got from his writings.
It's about that direct connection, isn't it? Almost visceral.
Mm-hmm. And the critical recognition he did get, Charlotte Moser noting his shift to organic forms, Eleanor Freed highlighting his fascination with the life cycle, Texas Overview acknowledging his innovative mix of drawing and watercolor. It shows his journey was noticed and appreciated by those paying attention.
And his artistic evolution itself is fascinating, from abstract impressionism to Mucha Volantes, that style inspired by Dada and surrealism, using intricate dot patterns,
His optical illusions.
and his emphasis on collaboration, even signing, works as anonymous artists. It really underscores a desire to get past the individual ego. For you, maybe it prompts thinking about collaboration in your own life.
By deliberately challenging ideas of authorship, doing collaborative events and exhibitions, he was constantly pushing the boundaries of what art could even be. And his later works, showing mastery of symbolism and visual storytelling. It all points to a significant, lasting influence. This biographical background really helps us understand the path that led to an image like Red Stick.
Absolutely. It shows him as someone who didn't just make art, he kind of lived his art, making bold, unconventional choices for his creative truth.
Okay, now let's explore the insights from the book excerpts. Zen and the Art of Enlightenment frames Camblin's work as this really interesting dialogue between art and philosophy, looking into both the absurd and the profound parts of being human.
What's particularly striking is how his art transforms ordinary things. A simple figure-4 trap becomes a symbol of entanglement, right? A tattooed arm tells a whole unspoken history. A frog embodies Zen wisdom. The drawings are presented almost as visual paradoxes, blueprints for ideas that make you stop and think.
Exactly. It's not just the picture itself, but the layers of meaning it unlocks. And this exploration of illusion, impermanence, the absurdity of trying to hold on to anything fixed, these are all central themes we also saw in Red Stick.
Totally connected.
Mhm.
And the book goes into this idea of various traps, fear, time, the ones we make for ourselves, and the stories they tell. It contrasts this with pursuing stillness, that deep peace versus restless wandering. It's asking these big questions about how we navigate our lives.
Precisely. The book acts more like a set of thought-provoking questions and visual riddles than giving neat answers. It's meant to spark your own thinking, invite personal reflection.
And it draws connections between these themes in art history realism to abstract expressionism and how they resonate with traditions like Zen and the I Ching. Their shared focus on intuition, interconnectedness, cycles.
Yeah.
Camblin's work, in this view, becomes this amazing fusion of abstract forms and symbolic stuff, bridging ancient wisdom and modern art.
The Zen idea of just seeing, experiencing things directly without filters really complements the I Ching's cyclical view. Together, they suggest art can be like a portal, leading to heightened awareness, a more contemplative way of engaging.
So interpreting Camblin's art becomes this active thing, an ongoing dialogue, a personal journey. Archetypes emerge, our own inner landscapes shift as we sit with the images. The book is like a tool for psychological, maybe even spiritual growth, precisely because it doesn't give easy answers. For you, it's an invitation to actively join in making meaning.
It challenges our usual ways of seeing, inviting us to look differently, guided by Camblin's often strange, sometimes funny, occasionally unsettling pictures, which act almost like Zen koans meant to break our normal thought patterns.
And this concept of finding everyday enlightenment by embracing the absurd, finding humor even in decay, accepting that life and death coexist. It's a really powerful and ultimately life-affirming idea, I think. And accepting impermanence as liberating, not just scary.
It all circles back to that core idea we started with, facing mortality not as an end, but as a way to more fully live right now. And Camblin's art seems to be a catalyst for that inward look, that self-inquiry. It gives us, even today with all the information overload, a chance to slow down and think more deeply.
Ultimately, the book seems to want to reconnect us with wonder and reflection, suggesting enlightenment isn't some far-off goal, but a continuous unfolding, a way of being.
That's a perfect way to put it. Finally, we have Earl Staley's personal reflections on his friendship and collaborations with Bob Camblin. This really adds a human, very personal touch to the story.
It does. Staley says straight up he learned how to draw and paint from Camblin. You really get a sense of Camblin's personality, gregarious storyteller, and their shared studio, B&E Productions.
And those collaborative shows, like the tattoo show, back when tattoos were definitely not mainstream, it highlights their shared experimental spirit, their willingness to push boundaries together.
Yeah, pretty edgy for the time.
But then there's this sort of underlying sense of Camblin eventually pulling back, moving away from teaching from Houston, and losing direct contact with those friends. It adds a slightly poignant note.
It does. Staley's description of Camblin's last Houston studio as a wizard's den filled with curious, outrageous objects really brings his unique character to life, though.
Definitely paints a picture.
And adopting the Mr. Peanut persona, eventually signing as anonymous, it just reinforces that enigmatic quality we've been talking about.
And the fact that attempts to organize a big retrospective of his work were unsuccessful, it kind of adds to this feeling that he was maybe an artist operating a bit outside the main art world structures, despite his impact.
But Staley's lasting memory of him as a friend and a key teacher is a really lovely and fitting end to his account, isn't it?
It is. It reminds us of those vital personal connections that often shape artistic paths and the huge influence one artist can have on another.
So as we sort of draw this deep dive to a close, we've really journeyed through so many connected ideas. Mortality, impermanence, the nature of art, philosophical questions, all seen through the lens of this enigmatic artist, Bob Camblin, and his compelling image, Red Stick.
And a red stick, with its simple yet incredibly symbolic skull and that striking red X, it really does serve as this potent starting point for those complex, enduring questions. It's like a visual inviting you to keep thinking about it.
Yeah, hopefully for you listening, it sparks some new thoughts or connections.
It truly feels like Camblin's art, much like the questions it brings up, isn't meant to give final answers, but rather to encourage that continuous process of reflection and personal discovery. It echoes that idea from the book that enlightenment, whatever that means for each of us, is an ongoing unfolding.
Precisely. So as you go about the rest of your day, maybe consider this. Perhaps the deepest insights aren't found in neat, tidy answers, but in our willingness to keep questioning, keep exploring the mysteries, embracing both the stark realities and the surprising beauty in our fleeting lives.
And maybe, just maybe, take a moment to ask yourself, what symbolic X might you need to cross out in your own life to embrace the present more fully? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.